If we could afford the copyright on the In Excess song Listen Like Thieves, then you'd be hearing the opening notes, followed by the first line, on the talkback show on the radio. And then we'd bring down the theme song and introduce the show. So here's the show. Welcome to the GBC Podcast, where we talk about the Packers and our hometown of Green Bay. This is episode 2, created January 13th, 2022. Episode 1 went well. We got over 100 views on YouTube, so we feel way more confident in putting together episode 2. I'm John. I'm in Appleton, Wisconsin. Along with me are Jeff in Minnesota and Neil out on the East Coast. Say hello, gentlemen, and tell us what you're drinking.
Hello, gentlemen. Tonight I'm having the Founders KBS espresso flavor.
Good evening, gentlemen. I am having the Dewey Beer Company Secret Machine Sour, one of my absolute favorites.
Looks like a Bloody Mary.
Keeping it simple again, it's a Tito's vodka and seltzer on the rocks. All right, you can find us on Twitter and YouTube at Green Bay Chat, as well as Facebook at the GBC Podcast. Note, you're looking for Green Bay Chat in the GBC Podcast, not the Germantown Baptist Church. All right, let's take a look at our topics for this week. We are obviously going to look at the entire NFL season, maybe not the whole season, but the end of it for sure, as well as Game 17 in Detroit. We've got Packers of the past, as well as some great players this season in the MVPs and other awards. We'll look at the postseason. Hey, we've got a weekend of stress-free football. And then we'll talk about where to meet the divisional weekend in Green Bay. We got Packer history and some parting shots to wrap up this show. So let's look back. We've got the longest season in NFL history, 272 regular season games with 17 games per team, the longest season ever. But it was game 272 that people have been talking about. The last one got pretty wild. The Raiders and the Chargers, a game that had it ended in a tie, both teams would have gone to the postseason, and had it ended in a tie, there would have been a riot in Pittsburgh. I think that the way this game ended was perfect. You can call conspiracy what you want for the Chargers taking that timeout, but for the Raiders to get the win and move on, they deserved it. But I think that if that game had ended in a tie, it probably would have been one of the most controversial things in the history of the NFL. And like I said, there would have been a riot in Pittsburgh. Neil, what do you think on that?
I think that, I love the way that the Raiders team and the coach went after it. The fact that they were aggressive. I don't believe any of this conspiracy BS, but I love the fact that they decided we're going to try to win. And it's partly, of course, they don't want to play Kansas City, but I also think it's that they don't want to have to face Justin Herbert in the playoffs. And that to me is what I was most excited about, because as I'll say later, I think it's a wide open playoffs. And the last thing I want to play is a really good quarterback if we manage to get into the Super Bowl. And so knocking out players like that to me is selfishly a good thing.
I told you guys at the beginning of the season that I like Justin Herbert. So yeah, he's going to do well with the Chargers. Jeff, how'd you like that game?
I think if it would have ended in a tie, either Chris Collinsworth or Al Michaels would have stroked out. It was, Al Michaels is a Hall of Fame broadcaster, but man, he was grasping for words there. It was kind of funny to listen. And like I said, I think Collinsworth would have just been in a fetal position. I'm guessing that would have been it. It was exciting to watch, and I think for the Raiders to win, the timeouts were weird. It was one of those situations where, as the Raiders kicker, he misses, they're in the playoffs. He makes it, they're in the play. It was it's unprecedented in terms of what he was up against. But for all the goofy stuff that the Raiders have been through this year, that was fitting as well. That was a fitting, hopefully not an end. I mean, obviously they're playing this weekend, but we'll see with our picks where we rank them. But certainly exciting, and a hungry team is a dangerous team in the playoffs.
A lot of people I think balked not at the 17-game regular season, but the expanded playoffs that started last year. And you look at how things worked out this year with 7 teams from both conferences going on. We finally had a day of meaningful games on Sunday as well. How many Sundays have there been the past few years where those games just didn't mean anything? And especially the very last game, for them to get the Raiders Chargers on that last game, pretty incredible. One game that didn't mean a lot, but would have been nice to have gotten the win, is Game 17 for the Packers in Detroit. Green Bay loses the game, finishes with a 13-4 regular season record. It's the third year in a row of 13 wins, 39-10 in the regular season in the last 3 years. Take a look at that game. And also, what do you guys think about our reserves that got to play the second half, specifically Jordan Love?
Well, so in what, 10 minutes of game, no, 30-ish minutes of game football, he threw half as many interceptions as Rodgers threw all season. Okay, there's room for improvement. I think the fact that the running backs got some, I don't remember his name even, but, backup running backs, backup wide receivers, they get some reps kind of for that next man up. They were competitive. It was kind of the defense that, with those trick plays and things like that, because this was the Super Bowl for Detroit. So they were going to go all out. Hopefully there's a lesson here as well for the Packers in the playoffs, because obviously it's the last game if you lose for everybody. So to be, for the asshats, we'll address that in a bit. But and other, both the defense and the offense sides of the ball, I think, they got some playing time. It was a meaningless game, but yet there was some meaning to some reps.
The thing that to me is most concerning about the game is not really how we played or anything like that. I thought Jordan Love played fine. It was certainly far better than he played against Kansas City. And I, saw a reason to be encouraged by Jordan Love on Sunday as opposed to in Kansas City. The only thing I'm actually concerned about is that it might actually give Detroit some momentum heading into next year. They've been terrible for so long, and they actually look like they might have a core of something. It looks like they've got a coaching staff that is, has a plan as far as how they're going to move forward. Jared Goff is not the future probably, but they look like a team that we're going to actually have to worry about for the first time in a really long time. Go ahead.
The city of Detroit thanks you. Sorry.
My other highlight of the game was just, I love DeGuara, and having DeGuara get that long touchdown to me was just fabulous. I want to see him really make an impact in the postseason and in upcoming years. And I think he's somebody who's got, to take things in a completely different direction as far as what we're trying to accomplish, and seeing him play well was great.
Well, if he and Tunyon can, be on the field at the same time, I don't know how much longer Mercedes Lewis is going to play. So, if you get those two out there, they're both fast. They're both, I think they're good. They're decent blockers, or pretty good blockers. So no, I think that will be exciting to watch.
Is Mercedes on the Tom Brady health plan? Because that's the only way he's lasting.
I don't know. That longer. Dude is like what, 17 years in the league. He's been around forever.
We like to talk about how Detroit loses games as only Detroit can. And in this instance, Detroit won a game as only Detroit can. They can't win for losing, and they can't lose for winning, because by winning the game, they move out of the number 1 spot in the draft. They drop down to number 2 because Jacksonville had also won their game. Jacksonville beating the Colts and knocking the Colts out of the playoffs. But Detroit, Neil, I think you mentioned it. Who out there is there? Who is there a definite number one right now? Detroit's still in a good spot, getting the second overall pick. They're
in a good spot, and they can say now we've beaten the Packers. And I think that's something that the coaches love to point to is, hey, you know how to beat the Packers, so you can do this regularly now. Not that they will, but
right. Well, something that the two coaches that were fired on Monday found out about.
One of them did beat the Packers though this season. That's the interesting thing about it. Plus, they had a great game to end the season. So, what's going on in Minnesota? What's going on in Detroit? Or I'm sorry, Chicago. I think we're going to talk about that at a different time. And with the end of the regular season, naturally, we're going to talk about our most valuable player, some other awards and recognition, Rookie of the Year, Defensive Player of the Year, things like that. But before we jump into this season, let's get some Packers of the past. Neil.
So I'm going to talk today about Terdell Middleton. Terdell Middleton, 1978 is the year that we're going to. All of us were 8 years old. The Packers, the previous 5 years, had gone 24, 44-2. Their best record over that time was 5-9. We had no real reason to think that our hometown Packers were going to be great. So 1978 was the first year of a 16-game season. We really had no reason for hope, and yet we somehow ended up with a team that was over 500 for the first time in our conscious lifetime. We went 8-7-1 that year, and one of the big reasons why we went 8-7-1 was because of Terdell Middleton. Terdell was in his second year on the team, and he had 1,116 yards rushing and 11 touchdowns on the ground, 1 by the air. It was the rushing that did the job, because it was certainly not our passing. We, have been blessed as Packers fans for a long time with great quarterbacking, and we did not have that in 1978. David Whitehurst was our quarterback. He started all 16 games. In the first game of the year, he was 3 of 9 for 31 yards. In a game against the Cowboys, we had a special level of
Ineptitude.
In which Whitehurst went 3 for 16 for 31 yards with an interception. Then Dennis Sproul came in, was 1 of 5 for 16 yards. And finally, Bobby Douglas played 3 of 5 for 41 yards as the most efficient quarterback. It should be noted that Sproul and Douglas were in their last year last year they ever played in the NFL. But we did have Terdell Middleton, and that was, really something that was incredible. His image is on here, number 34. And as Packers fans at that time, we were used to being beaten by the Bears constantly. And, specifically Walter Payton was the guy who destroyed us. And we thought about Terdell Middleton as our Walter Payton. I remember getting the 1979 Packers yearbook and being happy with seeing number 34 on the cover and it being our 34. Unfortunately for Terdell, that was his only really good season in the league. He finished with 495 yards the following year, had a couple of other years. But one trivia question, he did end up in the USFL in 1984, played with the Memphis Showboats. And what future Packer star was his teammate on that Memphis Showboats team? Reggie White. Reggie White, that's right. So we have a connection between the one of 2 good years of our entire youth and the happiness of the 90s with Reggie White. So yeah, it was an incredible year for us because we actually finally were good. We were 8-7-1 and then lost the tiebreaker against the Minnesota Vikings, who we had tied earlier in that year. And so I always had a bitterness about that 8-7-1 season that we tied for the division and did not make the playoffs.
That was my first game ever, Neil, the 1978 season, November 26th of 78. The Vikings at the Packers, and it ended in a 10-10 tie. First game ever, you get a tie. Right? Just like they say, kissing your sister. I don't have a sister, so I don't know.
Yeah, that 1978 season is kind of crazy. One of the things that's great about statistics we have available now is you can go to Pro Football Reference. You can actually look up, obviously, stats, but they'll actually give you fantasy football rankings for 1978. Number 1 fantasy football player, Walter Payton. Number 2, John Jefferson. Number 10, Lynn Swann. But our Terdell Middleton was number 12. David Whitehurst was at number 123 with those 10 touchdown passes. So clearly
the most valuable player of that Packer team in 78. But let's talk about the Packer team here in 2021. Most valuable player, not just of the team, but the league. We know it's Aaron Rodgers, right? Is there any point of discussing anything outside of that? We don't need to believe that, do we?
Not as Packers fans, but if you want to go by objective numbers, right? Rodgers is only like 9th in passing yards. He's only 9th in touchdowns. So there are reasons why other people could make the argument, but Bruce Arians can. Well, I
fuck himself. Yeah. Well, it could be, and we could have another, tie, because was that back 97, 98? Was it Favre and Peyton Manning tied for the MVP?
Favre and Sanders.
Oh, sorry.
1997. Yeah.
Okay. So the question, is there a Brady Rodgers MVP tie?
I think the most important thing for the MVP race is that Rodgers had his worst game the first game of the year, and everyone's forgotten about it by now. And Brady has recency as far as poor games, and so I think that Rodgers is in good shape. Even his COVID mistakes are in the past, far enough in the past that they clearly don't matter. We ended up as the number 1 seed. If we'd ended up anything other than the 1 seed, I think there'd be more of an argument. But I just don't see the voters going, choosing Brady. It's not like they have this great love of Brady inherently. So
well, and I think the MVP is not for character. It's not for what was done off the field. It's how he performed on the field, how valuable he was to his team and to the league. And not to be a homer here, but Rodgers is probably, or like I said, maybe we get a Brady tie with that off the field, the COVID stuff factoring in, because you had the one sports writer was pretty vociferous in his disdain for Mr. Rodgers. So, if other folks feel like that, who knows? But it's not, he wasn't taking steroids. He wasn't cheating. He wasn't, in the game per se. So, judging on its merits, we'll see what happens.
Other players that'll get in that conversation, though, Jonathan Taylor in Indianapolis and Cooper Kupp with the Rams. And that'll be, we'll let those 50 guys who get their votes work that one out. Let's take a look at the Packers, though. Rookie of the year, defensive player of the year. For me, defensive player of the year, clearly Devondre Campbell. Terrific pickup. Number 59 in the middle of the field, has done everything that could be asked of him and more. And we finally have a linebacker who can handle pass coverage as well. Rookie of the year, I think you look at our top 2 draft picks. I think on the defensive side, you got to like Eric Stokes and what he did. but an unsung hero on that offensive line, Royce Newman, had a solid season at guard. And those are, I think, my rookie of the year candidates for this team.
So I'll go next in terms of rookie of the year. I think so. Are we talking a rookie or MVP or both? Because we've got,
whatever you want, Jeff. It's you got
the because I think Rashawn Gary, he had the injury. I think he was a disruptor. I think he had, he finally is developing into the player that kind of they really rolled the dice when they drafted him in the first round. And it appears that that's going to pay off. Also on the defensive side of the ball, you've got Kenny Clark, who's been just a beast in the middle, stopping the run. And like I said, those talented defensive backs, I think, and as everybody comes back into the fold, get the Smith brothers back together, it looks like, don't get ahead of myself here, but hopefully for the playoffs, we'll have, folks back in the defensive line, and it'll be formidable. But I think, they held together, next man up kind of thing. And, we'll talk about the playoffs in the next segment. Neil?
Devondre Campbell obviously was named by one of the media companies as all pro. And you can't argue with that, but we're not giving any love to Rasul Douglas. The guy saved us in multiple games and played half of a season. And our secondary, we were terrified of what was going to happen to our secondary without Jair. Even when we're worried of Kevin King going down. When you're worried about Kevin King going down, that's a real problem as far as your secondary. And Rasul Douglas and obviously Eric Stokes did an incredible job as far as not just filling in, but actually serving as players who were stars.
Yeah. And the more reps, hopefully they get, over the next year or two, they'll really be shut down corners.
All right. Well, we've got a weekend of stress-free football coming up here in Green Bay, you guys. Tell me, who do you want to see? Who do you not want to see? So your choices, the way the schedule worked out: Eagles, Cardinals, 49ers, Rams. Who do you want in Green Bay in the divisional round? Who do you not want in Green Bay?
I could go, I do not want to see the Niners. I would love to see the Cardinals.
I would love to see the Eagles because I don't trust Jalen Hurts at all. I don't want to see the Rams or the 49ers, actually.
I concur on the Eagles. Boy, that'd be nice if they got a nice upset of Tampa and they came into Green Bay. That'd be great. Not going to happen. I do not want to see the 49ers in the second round. With that said, let's take a look at our postseason. There are 6 wildcard games this weekend. The other thing to keep in mind, guys, like I said earlier, we had 272 regular season games. We only have 13 meaningful professional football games left before we go into this 6-month abyss without football. All right. So let's make the best of it that we can. We've got 6 games on tap this weekend for the wild card. We're going to go around the horn here, you guys. We're each going to make our picks. I'm going to write down your picks so that we can give each other shit about it next weekend. Who gets it right, who gets it wrong. So let's start Saturday. Saturday afternoon, we got the Raiders at the Bengals. Both teams ranked with a 10-7 record. The Raiders got that 5 seed with the win, as we talked about. Bengals winning the AFC North. We got to see the Bengals in person when we were in Cincinnati this year in the 4 seed. Bengals favored at home by 5.5. I like nobody in this game. I think the Raiders had a huge emotional win. It's going to be a come down for them. Go ahead and put me down for the Bengals. Neil, what do you say?
I absolutely think the Bengals are going to win this one. The Raiders just they did everything they could. They beat nobody to get into the playoffs, and the Bengals just have too much talent on the offensive side of the ball to they're going to have a good game, and they're a team that actually has a chance at a run.
We didn't talk about Jamar Chase. He's a good rookie of the year candidate. Jeff, what do you like in that game?
I'm also going to go with the Bengals, but I'm just going to put this out there that if the defensive line of the Raiders can get to Joe Burrow and really rattle him, it's going to be the Raiders.
Now, we're picking these games straight up. If either of you want to, put it out there and go with the spread as well, you can. But
we'll go straight up. We'll keep it simple.
Keeping it simple. Straight up.
I know.
All right, the nightcap, Saturday night, the 7:15 game. We have the Patriots at the Bills. It is an AFC East matchup. The Bills end up winning the division with an 11-6 record. The Patriots 10-7. So you got a 3-6 matchup there. It's in Buffalo. I didn't look at the weather report. I don't know what it's going to be like, but it is the Bills favored by 4. Jeff, who do you like there?
Bills Mafia.
Yes, going with the Bills. All right, Neil, what do you say?
The Bills have been too up and down all season, and there's a bigger factor. I think that it's clear that Bill Belichick has a pact with the devil. it's quite possible that Bill Belichick is going to take over for Satan in controlling the underworld afterwards. And I think that the Patriots are going to pull it off.
Put Neil down for the Patriots. I'm leaning your way there, Neil, because the Bills, boy, they started out great. They looked like the world champions in the first part of the season, and then they just kind of Jekyll and Hyde their way through the rest of the season. And they have the advantage of being at home, but I think Belichick is going to prove to be too much there. Neil, I'm going to jump on the Patriots winning that one on the road with you as well.
My hope is that Mac Jones, see, that he plays like a rookie. I mean, he has played not like a rookie for the most part all year. However, if he can get rattled, it's going to be loud. It's, Saturday night, the Bills fans are going to be tuned up. I think it's going to be pretty competitive, and I think I don't know, we'll see. But I agree with you about Bill Belichick too.
I mean, the thing about Belichick, though, is that he's done a great job keeping Mac Jones from being in a situation where there can be problems, just as he did with Tom Brady early in his career. I mean, he knows how to deal with this.
He manages the game. That's a terrible phrase, but it also is extremely true.
All right, 3 games on Sunday where we hopefully don't plan on getting anything done other than watching a lot of football. The noon game, it's that big 7-2 matchup. So the Philadelphia Eagles with a 9-8 record get to go down to Tampa. The Bucs also had a 13-4 record this year. We talked about the Packers 13-4, but Tampa Bay quietly ties the Packers 13-4. The Packers get the tiebreaker, got the 1 seed. Tampa at home favored by 8.5 points on this one. I know where I'm going with this one. I'm saying Tampa Bay is going to win this one. They're going to cover that spread, and they are going to just walk all over the Philadelphia Eagles in that game, Neil.
The only chance that the Eagles have is if Tom Brady finally ages. I think that's the only way that it occurs, and there's no real evidence of that happening yet. So, I think the Buccaneers are going to win this one easily.
I'm going to be the contrarian. Go Eagles.
You're taking the Eagles, huh? You want to see Philadelphia in Green Bay the following week.
Fine by me.
That is a courageous pick, Jeff. I look forward to talking about it next week. All right. Sunday, 3:30 matchup. It's a 3-6 matchup. It is the Dallas Cowboys with a 12-5 record and those dangerous San Francisco 49ers with a 10-7 record. It's in Dallas. Dallas, the home team, but only favored by 3 points here. Jeff, who you like on that one?
I'm going to go with the Cowboys. Just, again, this is one where for positioning, just get the Niners out of there. Cowboys are at home. Like I said, if they're only favored by 3, I mean, it's basically a push. So it's, I don't know what team is going to show up, but McCarthy, he'll probably have them prepared to play at least, the first game. So, I'm going to go with Cowboys.
So my question for this game is, which team signed Deion Sanders? Because as far as I recall, when the Cowboys played the Niners, whatever team has Deion Sanders is going to win. So I'm going to assume the Cowboys must have signed him this week. I don't have a lot of faith in Mike McCarthy, but I agree with Jeff that he can get one game prepared well. And I think that this is the game that he wins.
I'm thinking Mike McCarthy shits the bed. I think that the Dallas defense is not ready for the speed of the 49ers, and it is the speed of the 49ers offense that scares me coming into Green Bay. I'm taking the 49ers to win that one, and they'll be in Lambeau Field the following week for the divisional round. Again, we'll talk about that next week. All right, the nightcap on Saturday, it is the Pittsburgh Steelers sneaking into the playoffs with a 9-7-1 record. They're the 7 seed. At the Chiefs, the 2 seed, Chiefs 12-5 on the year. The Chiefs at home favored by 12.5 points. This is clearly the Ben Roethlisberger retirement party happening in Kansas City. Put me down for the Chiefs to cover that spread as well.
So I don't think that Ben Roethlisberger is going to have quite as bad a last game as Dan Marino did in his 62-7 drubbing in his final game, but I think it could approach that. I think it's going to be an easy Chiefs victory.
Yeah, agreed. Put me down for the Chiefs.
All right, across the board. Good job, you guys. All right, and then Monday Night Football. The first ever Monday Night Football playoff game, and it is the Cardinals and the Rams. It's an NFC West matchup. Rams winning the West with a 12-5 record. Cardinals taking an 11-6 record. Arizona at Los Angeles. The Rams at home favored by 4. And as we found out that SoFi Stadium is not necessarily a good home field advantage for teams. And the Rams could have trouble even with their the Arizona fans coming in. It's not a big trip getting from Phoenix over to LA. This could be an interesting game in Los Angeles with that 4-point spread as well. The Cardinals, I think at the beginning of the season, again, Kyler Murray, early MVP candidate. The Cardinals had a 7-0 start to the season that they were, it was like, oh my gosh, who's going to beat the Cardinals? How's anyone ever going to beat them? Well, people did, and they finished up 11-6. Kyler Murray has just been looking lost the last few weeks. I want to say the Cardinals can go in there and win this game, but just the last few weeks, those losses, I don't know, isn't looking right. I know they might have JJ Watt in the game. I don't think it's going to be enough. I think the Rams are going to pull this one out to advance in the Monday night matchup.
I agree with you, John. I think you're right. It's not a home field advantage. I think that, experience Matthew Stafford, no, but in terms of, some of the other players, the defensive line, things like that, there is playoff experience, and I think against Arizona that the Rams will win. I don't know if they'll dominate. I think it'll be a really competitive game. I think we're probably looking at the last team to have the ball wins. I think it's just going to be back and forth and back and forth.
I think the real winner of this game is the team that gets to play the Rams or Cardinals next week. The fact that they're on a short week is an incredible bonus to us, probably as Packers fans. And I'm really excited that the NFL decided to do something as stupid as have a Monday night playoff game. At least for this year, I am. So the problem with the Cardinals is, last 2 years, they've started out hot and ended up slowly, much like those 1978 Packers that started 7-2 before finishing 8-7-1. And I just don't have any faith of them, restarting up and gaining momentum again in the playoffs. So I think even though Stafford can Stafford, I think that it's going to be a Rams victory.
All right. So we got the picks down now. With that said, now if, as you said, Neil, if all the home teams win, if the Buccaneers and the Cowboys both win, then the winner of that Rams Cardinals game does come to Green Bay the following week. Let's see. I'm the only contrarian on that Cowboys game. I'm taking the underdog Niners. Jeff, your only underdog is the Eagles, and then Neil, you and I agree on the Patriots. Otherwise, we're taking chalk on the week for the wild card. After the wild card, it goes to the divisional weekend, and you guys, we get stress-free football this weekend. But then next week, we're going to be home. And where are we going to meet? We're going to meet at the Lorelei Inn. If you're going to be in Green Bay, head over to see our friend Dave. We'll be there. We don't know yet. Friday night, Saturday night, maybe Sunday as well. No, he's closed Sunday. It depends on how the schedule works out when the Packer game is going to be. But the Lorelei Inn on Webster Avenue in Green Bay, because we're East Siders, right? We're Alloway kids. We'll give Dave a plug on the show. And if you watch the College Football National Championship this week, the Georgia Bulldogs came away with the title. And you may have noticed, if you were paying attention closely, the G on the Georgia Bulldogs helmet bears a striking resemblance to our Green Bay Packers logo. There's a reason for that in Packer history. And with the bedtime story, here's Jeff.
So on August 5th, 1961, the logo that you see below me there was unveiled by Coach Lombardi in an intra-squad game between the Packers offense and the Packers defense. How did this G come to bear? Well, it's a very interesting story. Evidence suggests that Lombardi and Lombardi alone asked equipment manager at the time, Gerald "Dad" Brasher, for a logo. And it is most likely that Dad asked an assistant in the equipment room at the time in 1961, a gentleman by the name of John Gordon, who was an art student at St. Norbert College in De Pere. So Dad wanted John to draw a G in a football shape. Now, again, if you look at that form below me, and if you're looking at my hat, you'll maybe see that there's a difference. Well, you'll have to wait and see. So the original G that was put together in 1961, the understanding that the G was going to be for Green Bay, nothing more, Green Bay. That year, 10 teams adopted a helmet logo, but only the New York Giants and the Packers had letters on their helmets. The G was, however, reshaped before the 1970 season. Why is that, you ask? Well, that's a good question, and there's not a lot of history to suggest or to tell us why. NFL properties began in 1963. And so prior to the football-shaped logo. And so did they have something to do with it? Not really sure. According to the Cliff Crystal book, there are no corporate records to indicate in any way through the Green Bay Packers why the logo was changed, again, from more of a football shape, as you see there, to the round G. Now, also what's interesting, as John alluded to, the Georgia G. So back in 1964, the head coach of the Georgia Bulldogs at the time, he reached out to Vince Lombardi and asked Mr. Lombardi if he could use a facsimile of the G that the Green Bay Packers were using. Lombardi said yes. And since 1964, the Georgia Bulldogs have used their iconic G logo in a different color. But again, it was not football shaped. It was more rounded, much like the Packer G is today as of 1970. So conspiracy theorists, you've got something more to chew on, but that is the history of the Packer G.
And a guy like Eric Stokes got to wear it in Georgia and now in Green Bay.
So Jeff, in that history, 10 teams starting out in 1961 with the logo. Is that a direct response to the AFL? Did the AFL actually introduce the logos on the helmet and the NFL sort of felt, hey, we got to catch up to this stuff?
You know, that's a good question. It didn't reference which teams, because up until this point, you know, you've got the Browns, you've got the Steelers. Well, actually, those were they expansion teams? When did if they were any prior? So the Baltimore Colts, I believe they had they had a logo. Their helmet, they had the horseshoe, but it at least, you know, it implies that nobody had a logo before 1961. So maybe that was kind of the differentiator. Now it wasn't just you know, as I said, letters. It was stripes or other things as well. So, you know, today there's a whole bunch of stuff on everybody's helmet, with the exception
unless you're the Browns.
Exactly, with the exception of the Browns, old school. But by and large, there's a whole bunch of crap on the helmets. So, you know, the Packers at this point, so they have the second longest. It's recognized the second longest logo, again, behind the Colts. But the logo is definitely different from what you see. Again, that's from 1961 through 1969. And why was it changed? There's no official Packer record why it was.
All right, now here's my trivia question of the day for you. There were three principal people in that story that Jeff read, and the three of us have a near direct connection to one of those three people through our high school graduating class. Do you know who that is and why?
Is John Gordon Ben's dad?
Ben Gordon, and our graduating class is the son of John Gordon, the guy who drew that Packer G. Jeff, good guess. Yes, and a shout out to Ben, because I know he listened last week. Ben, thanks for tuning in. You got to be a part of our Packer history and trivia today as well. All right, that's the show. You guys, any parting shots before we get out of here?
Yeah, looking at the playoffs this year, I think what is most striking to me is that every single team has a flaw. There's not one team that has just sort of gone through the entire season and been clearly a dominant team. Of all the teams in the playoffs, the only one that I don't think has a chance of making the Super Bowl is the Eagles. Every other team, it's going to depend on matchups and exactly how it plays. And this has got a lot of a vibe like the 2010 season, when, you know, you've got a chance of running over teams that are flawed, and you have a chance of any team potentially making an appropriate run depending on how the games turn out. And I think this is going to be an incredibly interesting playoffs because it's essentially wide open because of the fact that every team has its own deficits.
As long as one of those teams doing the running through isn't in the NFC, I told you, Neil, we're taking if out of the conversation. It is only when the Packers reach the Super Bowl this year. Jeff, anything from you?
The power of positivity. Thank you, John.
All right, everybody, you can get more information on the GBC podcast, again, at Green Bay Chat on Twitter. We are also on YouTube at Green Bay Chat, and then on Facebook at the GBC podcast, Green Bay Chat. May you fully appreciate the magnitude of your impending good fortune, and thanks for joining us.